Hi, I want to give a shout out to all you truth seekers that are out there. And I know this isn't a scheduled call, but I just really had some time today and my heart is heavy. I mean, as you know, God has given me a burden about the coronavirus since January 28th, when He had given me certain numbers right after that in early parts of February, how these numbers could roll up to 1 million. And I struggled with that number morning after morning, night after night, thinking, man, could this virus have the potential to really hit 1 million people? And as I was trying to share my thoughts with so many people, it's hard to get people to want to talk about anything that would be difficult to handle or difficult to imagine. Everybody loves to live in that perfect realm, that perfect lifestyle. And hey, when everybody's saying peace and safety, look out, because then sudden destruction will come upon them. And I believe that's just another scripture that's coming into place right now as we're dealing with this virus. Yes, is God faithful? Absolutely. Will God always be faithful? Absolutely. But the whole underlying message behind these live stream series that I'm doing on the coronavirus is this: what if? What if God is really speaking? What if this is really a sign from God? What if this is really a judgment from God? And what if that is true? What are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be hearing? How are we supposed to be acting as us as leaders of churches or ministries and leaders among ministries around the world? I'm watching so many people and how they're having a hard time dealing with this. And I see so many people that kind of wait in the shadows and wait to see what's really going to happen. Then you'll hear everybody come out with all their prophetic unctions and how great things are going to be or how things weren't going to be and how God told them. But you heard very few people at the beginning of 2020 coming out saying, that some tragedy was going to hit in 2020. It was all 2020 is going to be perfect vision and perfect. Everything's going to be perfect and everything's going to be peace. And I mean, everything's going to be peace. And as I said before, that could very easily be the white horse and the rider on it. So, but I do just have a burden regarding this virus. And we've watched the numbers back in March 8th. We only had about 780 cases. And there I was sitting there saying that God gave me the number 1 million, how this thing could possibly hit 1 million and 1 million and 1 million. I was always bringing that out on every single video that I did. And people were just looking at me like I was crazy. Well, here now we are today. Today is April 7th. We're still not 1 month away from when I start doing this at home, March 8th, when we got home. We're at 1,491,000, roughly about 200. So 1.4 million cases today, which is incredible. We have 80,000 deaths in that. But the number that I've been telling everybody to watch lately is that active number. How many cases are still active? And right now in the world, there is 1 million cases that are still active. How many of those people are going to end up dying? I personally hope not too many, but we have to be praying about this. It's just a concern of mine. Right now in the United States today, we have 385,000 cases. Out of that, there are 12,000 people that have died already in the United States. I remember when that number was 2, and 2 was a lot, but to get 12,000 is a lot. But the number here again that really concerns me, that you got to listen to these numbers. That number is 350,000 active cases. Those are active cases out of the cases that are confirmed. Now, I've taught in the previous lessons what all these numbers mean. But if you have a total of 350,000 cases out there that are still sitting, and those are just out of the box of cases that have been confirmed, that is a lot of people. plus the numbers that are rolling in every day now to compound those and to see how many deaths are going to really come out of this. I mean, I'm getting a whole different perspective on this in my flesh and in my carnal mind after God has spoken to me spiritually and given me a prophetic insight of 1 million. I always saw that number a million and I couldn't wrap my brain around it. I couldn't wrap my mind around that. But regardless of how many numbers there are, that's not what's important in this, even though they hold great importance. What's more important to me is what is God really saying? What is God saying in this? So as I've said, we've had several different messages on this, and I just like to hit the points again that we talked about. I think it would end being about part 4 or 5. But God gave me specifically 10 points to paint a window, at least to paint a picture frame, to get people to look inside this window, to think, look, if I am living during that time frame, we could be approaching the coming of the Messiah. And that's what this is all about. How close are we to the coming of the Messiah? And we know this, the first thing that had to happen was Israel had to become a nation. Now, you could go back and read Ezekiel 36, 37, 38, 39. You can read all those chapters, probably specifically Ezekiel 37 and 38, to read up on the dry bones, or you could just Google that and see how Ezekiel gave a prophecy that at one time Israel would be destroyed as a nation, not one stone left upon another. But yet there would be a time, another season, another window that God would bring them back as a nation. So what happens once God does that? I believe in 1948, God hit his stopwatch. And that was the beginning of one of the final seasons that would usher in the coming of the Messiah. Now, why would I believe that? I really believe that in my heart because Jesus gave a detailed description of the events of the coming of the Messiah in Matthew 24. The disciples came to Jesus privately and asked him, they said, Lord, tell us, what will be the sign of thy coming in the end of the age? You have to read that chapter over and over and over again, all the way about down to Matthew 24, about 15, where he talks about the abomination of desolation. I really believe that is going to be another stake in the ground that would be an undeniable time in the history of mankind, just like Israel becomes a nation. That's an undeniable prophetic event. And that's really what we look for, because a lot of times now, I hear so many people, because we have so many doctrines and denominations and what people believe and what people think. And what happens is God's busting their bubble now. God's busting their box, because he come out with a pandemic, a pestilence that is rocking the world, and the most strongest economy in the world was the United States. And this pandemic has absolutely shut us down like we were nothing. So I don't think we need to overlook this and call it the common cold or a flu like doctors were at the beginning. It just baffled me that they were doing that after they had seen the damage and the things that were done over in China. I mean, China had, 85,000 cases and so many deaths, and we were just kind of just shoving it in the corner and saying, oh, it's just a common cold. It's never going to hit the United States. It's never going to amount to anything. Oh, it's no big deal. And now look where we are. Just like I said, from when I started putting those numbers down March 8th to today, April 7th, we're at 1.4 million cases. That's unbelievable. But anyway, first, number one is Israel became a nation in 48. Number two, we get into describing what a generation was, because Jesus said this generation will not pass. The generation that sees all these things take place. So from the time that Israel became a nation, that generation will see all these things take place. That generation will not pass until they see the coming of the Messiah. Well, if you take a generation is 40 years, 70, or 100. Well, right now we're at 70 years, because 1948 plus 70, 2018. And that gives us a window from 2018 to about 2048 as a window. There are 30 years of which I'm looking for certain signs to take place on the earth that are undeniable that we could look at and say, we're getting closer to the coming of the Messiah. Number three, Trump became president 2017. Also in that year, which we're going to look at today, a part of it was the great sign. It was an undeniable sign. NASA said there would be one chance in 70 trillion of that sign being fulfilled. And it was fulfilled on September, I think it was 29th, might have been the 27th, 2017. Number four would be this: the United States global positive impact on the world. This was a very positive move in regards to our economy. And I showed how capitalism and also socialism has been affected by the coronavirus. Number five, trying to bring world peace. The United Nations was talking about world peace. Donald Trump was talking about the world peace. Israel was talking about world peace. For the first time in the history of the world, the United States was looking at making the peace treaty, confirming the peace treaty with Israel. First time in the history of the world. Number six, first time Israel is recognized as the capital of Israel. This is huge because a lot of the prophecies that we're seeing take place right now could not take place before Israel was a nation and Jerusalem was the capital. So point number seven, United States moves their embassy to Jerusalem. Point number eight, we watched the fight for the prime minister of Israel. Point number nine was the coronavirus, the pandemic, the pestilence that became a pandemic, entered into China and the United States. Point number 10 was we looked at the locust and what they're doing around the world right now. Those are 10 points that I would advise you just to take a quick look at. We looked at the four horses of the apocalypse. We looked at the white horse. Now we know that represents Catholicism, possibly the Pope, that they believe that this may be the last Pope. But in addition to that, I say it reminds you of righteousness or holiness. And this whole movement for world peace, I believe that is represented by the white horse. Now, it had to happen after Israel became a nation to fit it inside the window frame that we had built. Number two, the second horse was the red horse. You know that we preach and teach that represents communism. There was a sword granted to them. I believe that's to take peace off the earth. Okay, that was number two. Number three, we talked about the black horse in the scales. That represented the socialism, how it could be affected by this pandemic, and how we was looking at these horses and just saying, look, how could this one pestilence, how could this one world pandemic, a pandemic that's affecting the entire world, how could it possibly fulfill portions of those prophetic visions that John the Revelator saw? So when we look at the black horse, how could the coronavirus have anything to do with that black horse? Well, that black horse represented socialism and capitalism, okay, on the earth. And when you see those scales tilting, when you see all the economies around the world, when you see the pandemic, a world-changing event, the only thing I'm saying is what if? What if these are all points and signs that God is saying, look, we're getting closer to the return of the Messiah, regardless of if you hang your hat on pre-trib, mid-trib, or post-trib. Many of you know what I believe, but I don't want to get wrapped up in that, because then people just shut you off if you don't believe. If they don't believe, you don't believe exactly the way I believe. I'm doing this series to just train and educate people, because remember, Jesus said, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. He also said that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all knowledge. God's not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. So we need to tie these things together, be able to stand firm as a man or woman of God and take a look at the things that are on the earth right now and see how they can be imparted or placed in the Bible prophecy, just to show us, if nothing else, how these things could actually take place right before the Messiah comes back to the earth. Number 5, we talked about that pale green horse. Thank God for Dave Robbins and Irvin Baxter at End Time Ministries. The things that they've taught us over the years has been a great, just a great insight on prophetic revelation. So I want to give a shout out to them and say thanks for everything that you guys have done. You've carried the torch. You've done a great job. But that horse is a palish green colored horse. And when you look at that, it said that death, hunger, and sickness, or the word specifically pestilence, followed him. Well, here we are. We have a pestilence, an incurable disease that's also a pandemic. It's now on a world scale. So when God does something and it's on a world stage, or something's happening on the earth, then I hear people, well, did God do this? Did God cause this? Did God permit this? Did God do? And people's always trying to figure out with their carnal mind what God does all the time. What we need to look at, my friend, is what's really happening on the earth. I mean, what is really happening? Is God really speaking? And if he is, what does he want us to hear? He's preparing us for the return of the Messiah. Amen. So what I want to do today is I want to take a look here at a window in the Bible, in Revelation. We're going to go to Revelation 12. Now, when we talked about the 4 horsemen, they're in Revelation 6. So only thing I'm saying is this, is a lot of the church today does not even study the book of Revelation, because they think they're not going to be here when these things start to happen. So therefore, they can't get any revelation into the book of Revelation of Jesus Christ. That's why it's so important for you to be able to step back and say, Lord, open my eyes. I mean, I believe we're living in a time unlike any other. We are a part of that generation. Now listen, why didn't our grandparents, why didn't our great-great-grandparents see this? Well, many of them were alive before 1948. And if the Messiah wasn't coming, the need for the revelation was not poured out then, because the time was not there. The season was not there. I talk all the time about anti-skid. It's a product in the mountains of Pennsylvania where they throw out during the winter, and it stops people from skidding. Well, it's great in that season, in that window. It is a great product to be able to be used. But if you take that same product out and throw it on the road in, July or August, it's not going to have the same effect on a guy riding a motorcycle or a car down the road. It would cause you to skid. Same as a swimming pool. If you go out and jump in a swimming pool in June or July, water's going to feel pretty good. If you go out there in January and jump in the swimming pool, I think you're going to have a different feeling about that. So I'm just painting a window for time frames for you to say, look, when I see a pandemic, when I see a thing change in the world's economy, I mean, our economy is absolutely shut down. And this thing is not even, I've just been charting it for not even a month. March 8th, I started, and now we're at April 7th. And I've watched those numbers just like God showed me. 10 turn into 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to a million. I mean, just like boom, boom, boom. And the bigger the numbers get, the bigger the jumps that take place. And that's why now everybody's in this big rush, and all the big questions now in April are, when are we going back to work? When are things getting back to normal? That should be the last thing we're looking at. Right now, we got to defeat this thing. We cannot underestimate our adversary. That was one of the first points that God gave me. We need to make sure this thing is dead or almost over before we release everybody out there into our communities, because I'm telling you, there would be mass tragedies if this virus, as contagious as it is, if it is not contained or totally over, and we jump the gun and go back early, there could be mass tragedies. So I'm still watching it. I'm still looking. I want to see what God really has to say. I really want to see what God has to say and do through all this. But hopefully you have your Bibles now to turn to Revelation 12. I'm going to give you 8 things here that we're looking at today that are just in these few scriptures. 8 points. We're covering, we're painting the picture to get you to see some things in Bible prophecy that could paint a window of the things that are happening, if these things could possibly be happening now. And these go back to Jerusalem being a nation, Israel being the capital, Donald Trump being the president, someone who recognized Jerusalem as the state capital. The United States in the Bible, the United States is definitely in the Bible. So let's look. I keep preaching. I want to get to where I'm at here. Revelation 12, verse 1. Now a great sign. There are signs in the Bible, but this is a great sign. It puts it in a league by itself. It appeared in heaven, in the heavens. So this is where this took place. Okay, it took place. There was a sign in heaven that took place on September 27th, 2017. Might have been the 29th. I'm a little dyslexic, so my numbers might be a little bit off today. But just go to YouTube and type in the great sign and do a little research. It says a woman clothed with the sun, that would be Israel. Well, in order for this to happen, there would have to be an Israel at the time that this sign took place. So we couldn't be looking for the prophetic revelation unless Israel was a nation when the sign took place. It says that there was a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. You know what those 12 stars are? The 12 tribes of Israel. Then being with child, who was the child? Jesus. She cried out in labor and in pain to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven. Now this is another sign. Appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns. This would be sign or number 2 regarding the points that we're sharing with you today. Number 1 was the great sign in heaven had to take place when Israel became a nation. Number 2, we're looking at this. Another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now, many of you follow us on YouTube. We've lost many of our viewers and subscribers because we've changed our channel several times. And when we do that, we lose you. So please subscribe. Get back on there with all the other truth seekers. And let's continue to seek the truth. But behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, 7 diadems on his heads, on his heads. Those 10 horns we can see if we go back to Daniel chapter 2, when we look at the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had, at the very end of that dream, when Daniel interpreted it, he said that when you would see the 10 toes, then those 10 toes represented 10 kings or 10 kingdoms. Then we go to Daniel chapter 7, and we see the beasts, the nations that would be on the earth at the coming of the Messiah. We saw a leopard. The leopard had eagle's wings. We saw a bear. And we saw a lion. The lion had eagle's wings. We saw a leopard and a bear and a beast unlike any other beast. Those were the 4 beasts that he saw in Daniel 7. Then we're going to see here in Revelation 13 a breakdown of the exact same beast represented by the same animals. But these 10 horns are representative of the 10 crowns that we're going to see in 13 that are placed on those kingdoms. There are rulers or nations, there are kingdoms on the earth. So that has to be on the earth before the Messiah returns. So that's point number 2. If you go to point number 3, you need to go over to Revelation 12:12. Revelation 12:12. I'm always writing in my Bible. Now listen to this, point number 3. It says, therefore rejoice. Listen, the heavens aren't afraid. There's no fear in the kingdom of God. People always say, oh, don't be afraid. Tell people not to be afraid. Listen, we're not afraid. We're out here on the front lines. We're true seekers, and we're trying to preach the truth. We're trying to get the word out. God is definitely not giving us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. So the Bible says, therefore rejoice. Well, that's something. That word shocked me when I read that. Why would he be telling them to rejoice? Rejoice over what? He said, therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them, and woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea. Why? He said, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath. This happens when the devil is cast down to the earth in the last days, in that final window, where he knows that he has a short time left on the earth. Once again, that has to happen in the window after Israel becomes a nation. So he says, having great wrath, because he knows that he has a short time. The devil will know when his time is short. So that is point number 3. Now, point number 4 is this. Now, when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. So number 4, who would that be? That would be Israel. Now listen, for the Bible, this is an example of the window, the frame that I'm trying to paint you to see where we possibly could be in history. In order for that to happen, now when the dragon saw he'd been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. Well, who is that? That's Israel. So in order for the dragon to persecute the woman must be on the earth, functioning as a nation with a capital. Well, when did that happen? Well, Israel became a nation in 1948, but Israel was not recognized as the capital until, basically 2018 to 2020, when things start really happening, when Donald Trump declared that Israel would become that Israel was the capital. I mean, that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel. I was thinking about the date when it happened. It said, but the woman, listen what happened. This is point number 5. But the woman Israel was given 2 wings of what? A great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time, times and a half time from the presence of the serpent. So what is the Bible saying there in point number 5 that we're sharing today? It's saying the woman Israel was giving 2 wings of a great eagle. What are they talking about? The Bible specifically talking there about a time in history where, first of all, there would be a nation Israel. Secondly, the nation Israel would have a capital, and the world would be recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. And 3, the wings of the great eagle, the United States, would be protecting or planted in Israel. Well, what did Donald Trump do? Well, he recognized Israel as a nation. He recognized Jerusalem as the capital. And then he said that the United States embassy would be in Jerusalem. Well, when that happened, my friend, that was another prophetic fulfillment, a prophetic fulfillment. Now listen to this. Number 6 is this. He said this, then I stood on the sand of the sea. The sea represents the bodies of people on the earth. And I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Well, this is what we talked about over in Revelation 12:3, those 10 horns. And on his horns there were 10 crowns, kingdoms. These represent kingdoms. And on his head a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw. John the Revelator is seeing it on from a different side. Now listen to this, which I saw was like a leopard. So there's your leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear. There's the bear. And his mouth like the mouth of a lion. So there is the lion. So what nations does these beasts represent? Just like I was a football player my whole life and each team had a mascot. Well, that's the same way. Each nation is represented by an animal. So we know the lion is Great Britain, the bear is Russia, and the leopard is Germany. Well, where did the eagle go? Because the eagle was a part of this world order. Where'd he go? Well, we saw over here in verse 14 that the great eagle, the wings of the great eagle, were now over here, and they were protecting Jerusalem, and they were protecting Israel. So this is where we see how this all fits together. I just don't have the time because I want to keep these short little live streams. I want to keep the live stream short. So you need to go back to Daniel, and you will see the exact same beast where Daniel looked 2,500 years ago. He looked into the future and he said basically what he was prophesying, that these nations needed to be on the earth before the Messiah returned. They would be on the earth when the Messiah returned. So as we see them all on the earth functioning at the same time, within the same window as the 10 points that I gave earlier, those are just 10 small little points that are obvious historical facts now that are proven that these things have already happened. They're on the earth. So this gives us this window that we're looking, not just saying, well, I'm not going to be here when anything happens. So if anything happens, I told my friend today, I said, if God says right before the coming of the Messiah, these 10 things are going to happen. And number 5 is you'd see a pink elephant flying in the sky, blowing a green trumpet. Well, if you don't think you're going to be here when number 5 takes place, and you standing on the earth one day and you look up and you see a pink elephant flying around blowing a green trumpet, I think you better seriously reconsider your doctrines and the things that you might have been taught. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm trying to get you to expand, to stretch out your wineskin a little bit and say, some of the things I was taught in the past, I had to learn them so I could move on. Why? Because revelation is progressive. God gives you a little bit, and as soon as you accept that and you proclaim it, you preach it and teach it, you get it out there into the earth, then God will give you a little bit more. Then once you take that and understand that and run with that, God will give you a little bit more. And that's just the way of the kingdom. That's the way things happen. So that's number 6. Number 7, was Revelation 13:2. The beast prophesied need to be on the earth. That's what I've said to you. I declared what nations that would be. Revelation 13:16. Revelation 13:16 is this. Now listen. It says here, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Now, in order for this to happen, for those of us that study eschatology, you know that will not take place until the abomination happens, which is at the middle of the 3.5 years. And as I mentioned earlier, that happens in Matthew 20, the 24th chapter, verse 15. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, when you see that. So in order to see it, you're going to have to be there. In order to see that happen, you're going to have to be there to see it happen on the earth. So all I'm saying is, what if? What if all this is happening on the earth now? What happens if Israel, there was a time when no one thought Israel would become a nation again. So there we have Israel as a nation again, standing over there strong. We have Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. We have the United States, the wings of the great eagle, hovering over there protecting Israel. We have Donald Trump and Mike Pence doing a wonderful job against this pandemic, against this pestilence. So now we have a worldwide pestilence that has already affected and infected over 1.4 million people already. And it's not even been here a year. It's not been here 6 months. And people are looking for this thing to be over like in 2 weeks. I mean, I don't understand what they're thinking. Do they think just one day you're going to wake up and it's not going to be here? I mean, it's not going to happen that way. It cannot happen that way. I mean, this is a virus. I mean, if we're at 1.4 million and it falls down to 200,000 and we release the people again, the virus could pick back up. So what we need to do is find out what God's really saying in this. And I think God is trying to wake the church up, and he's trying to wake the world up. You know, we went back and we looked in Second Chronicles, the 7th chapter, and the whole chapter is important, but it tells you in that chapter why God places judgment on the earth. Now, we don't like to hear about judgment because everybody likes to hear peace and safety. But this is not a season right now to be talking about peace and safety. This is a time to be talking about survival. And what does God really have to say? I mean, I heard up until just recently people out there playing basketball and doing the things. Do you remember when I said that God showed me what was happening at Mardi Gras? When I said all those people down there in New Orleans was out there partying for Mardi Gras, do you remember? You could go back and look at the videos. I said the numbers are going to explode in New Orleans. And people were saying, why are you saying that? I said, because look what they're doing. It's like they're spitting in God's face. You see all the gay parades and all the lesbians and homosexuality and all the things, the perversion down there, witchcraft and all the things, palm readers that are going down. And I asked a friend of mine, how many people you think were down there? I mean, during Mardi Gras, during the time frame, you just pick a number. Whenever you're watching this video, you pick a number. How many people was there at New Orleans for that event? Now, this is when the coronavirus was moving, sweeping across the world. How many people was there? Do you think 10,000? Do you think 50,000? I mean, how many people do you think? More than a football game? 70,000? I mean, I don't know what people would think. But there was 1.5 million people. 1.5 million people that went to that one event. Now, this is a time when we were supposed to be considering quarantining ourselves and keeping ourselves pure in our house. What a time for the church to be proclaiming for people to stay at home. Now, you know, this is a window of the Passover. I've been talking about this the last probably 3 series. Tomorrow night, Wednesday night, is the Passover, April 8th. I would invite everybody, just with your wives, just with your children, get some grape juice or get some water in your house, have some crackers or some bread, and we're going to have communion together tomorrow night. That's Wednesday night at 7 p.m. I look forward to seeing you. Now listen, I have this burden in my heart to bring these messages to you, to help you, to better your understanding, to increase your knowledge of the things that could possibly be taking place. We're to the point now where you can hardly tell anybody anything because they just got their own preconceived ideas. I mean, we could have one of the greatest pandemics on the earth today ever to hit the earth, to shut down the world's economy. I mean, just take it from, you know, the Dow was at 30,000, to drop that thing down to 20, just like boom, in about 20 days was just incredible. Now you look, I said it was 100 countries, then it was 130, then 140. Then I admitted I didn't even know how many countries there were on the earth. Then my wife did some research. She said it was like 195. So we were saying 195 max. Now we find out that the virus is affecting 201 countries. 201 countries. Think how many people are being infected and affected by this. I mean, when it hits some of these countries, I'm telling you, there are going to be mass casualties. So please pray. Read Second Chronicles 7. Second Chronicles 7, but verse 14. But I say, read the entire chapter, Second Chronicles 7. Well, listen, my friends, thank you once again for tuning in. Please subscribe to our channel. Please like it. Please share it. Share it with others. And you know we're here to serve you. We'll do absolutely anything we can to help you. And keep seeking the truth, because you know that it's only the truth that'll set you free. We love you. We'll do anything to support you. Until next time, see you then.